was speaking to you the other day on the telephone, and you gave me this interesting story about your swimming lessons. I want you to share that and what we concluded from as the moral of that story.
Okay, so very quickly, I was at swimming lessons, and the instructor said, we're going out to the buoy. This is far out today. And I had said, I'm not going to, I will swim up and down any length, but I am not swimming towards the horizon that length. Anyway, he was very authoritative, and he says, you don't need to be afraid, I'll stay close to you, and la la la. Long story short, I went and I did it. But while I was going with fear and trembling, listen, my knees went wobbly, my legs started to shake, I was afraid, you know. But I said, that's another thing we can do. I started speaking very sternly to myself. I said, listen, Miss Lady, if you don't do it now, you will never do it. So we went out, and while I'm going, he's saying, yes, good going. If you're tired, stop now, you can do the breaststroke now. Back to freestyle. And you know, he's prodding me. He's saying, 1, 2, breathe. And he's helping me. And when I'm coming up, I'm looking to see how far is the life buoy out there. And he says to me, don't look at the distance, just keep swimming, keep going.
Just keep swimming.
Yeah, when I got there now, one of these advanced swimmers, she came to me, she said, you can back float? I said, yes. She said, that's another thing you can do if you're tired. And then this other guy, he looked at me, he said, see, you made it. Very encouraging. And all of a sudden, I said, oh wait, this is a picture of the Christian life. And you know, you said to me, it's not just the Christian life, it's life in general. When somebody is weak and struggling or fearful or anxious, we can't just leave them alone. You have to do like my beloved swimming instructor and say, you can do it. I will stay close to you. And sometimes we need that pat on the back. We need the applause. We need the recognition.
We need the hand held.
We need the hand holding. And we need people to tell us what to do when we feel we're breaking down. Remember, he said, if you're tired, do the breaststroke. And when I got there, she said, if you're tired, you can also back float. So we need, if we look at it as a metaphor for life and life's problems, we need to come alongside people. We can't carry nobody's problems for them. Michelle, I cannot carry your problems for you, and you can't carry mine for me. But you could at least give me a little phone call. You know, you could make a chicken for me if I'm sick and bring it so I can eat and don't have to worry about it. There are things that we can do to help each other, and that is what I would like us to do. And that's what we can do in terms of emotional wellness.
Back to this whole, the importance of emotional support and social support, where your instructor didn't stand on the sand. I said, don't worry, Dr. Evelyn, I'm out here, man, just yell if you need. I'm watching, you know, I will send the lifeguard for you. But this is exactly what we do with a lot of our friends. Yes. So for instance, I call you and say, you good? That's different from asking, how are you? You're good mean, I'm saying,
I'm expecting
I expect you to be good, and just give me a quick short answer so that we can move on to what I really called about. So we leave people to carry their problems themselves rather than hold their hand through it. And this instructor stayed with her right through, so she didn't have to feel the loneliness of it and the fear of it. But in April, I had a Friday that I just broke down. My brain was tired of trying to figure out the solutions of all these things, and I didn't know what to do, and the only thing I could do was cry. And I remember I picked up the phone and I called my best friend, and I literally I couldn't tell him anything. I couldn't say please, I couldn't do anything, and he heard me bawling and he said, I'm coming. That's all he said.
Beautiful.
The problem though is he was nowhere near me, and I didn't trust myself enough to do the right thing in the time it took him to come. So I called another friend who I wasn't even close to, and I called him just bawling, same way, can't put nothing into words. And he was like, Mish, what's wrong? And I couldn't put it in words. And he said, just breathe, just breathe. I couldn't just breathe because I'm in a panic attack. I'm in an emotional crisis. He stayed on the phone with me for the 27 minutes it took my best friend to get there. When my best friend came, he stayed and he just let me cry. He kept saying, what's wrong, and he realized I couldn't talk. But then he couldn't stay because his boss called. But by then, the young man I had called his wife, and the two of them called back and they said, we're coming. They came for me. This was in the morning, They came for me and they stayed with me till about 9 in the night.
Lovely.
They didn't force me to talk. They didn't force me to, don't worry about it. Don't cry, man. Come, stop the crying. It wasn't anything like that. They let me let out the fullness of the heaviness. And they didn't leave me because I couldn't trust myself alone.
And that's so
And
important.
that is the first thing that came to my mind when she spoke of her swimming instructor. These friends didn't say, I'm going to call you back in an hour, make sure you're good. Or I'm going to check for you at lunchtime, I'll bring you some food. They left work and stayed. And I cannot begin to tell you the healing power of that level of support and their presence and sacrifice that helped me to process Michelle, the difficult emotions.
You didn't need to invite me here. You know it all. But no, I'm serious because, first of all, the crying, emotional tears, the chemical composition of emotional tears, and stress relieving hormones. So you do actually feel better after a good cry. You're flushing out the negative feelings and so on. So that's one thing. Then the support, the fact that they came, and we can't always talk, we can't always express ourselves. Sometimes you just know that you don't feel right, and you just want to cry. You just want to know that somebody's there and that you're not going to go crazy because you heard what you say, you didn't even trust yourself.
I didn't.
And that is wisdom. You have to be strong enough to know when you are weak. And you got to be even stronger to admit that you are weak.
And to ask for
and
help.
to ask for help. But when we live lives closeted and we put up a front, you see what you have on there, people don't fake depression, they fake being okay. And many of these exuberant people that you see that just have it all together, they don't have it all together.
Both Veronica Evelyn and Professor Dwayne Devonish have made some really good points on how we can hold space and be there for persons who might be struggling, especially the ones who are more afraid to ask for help. And we can gently be their support system, or in the case that I describe it myself, we can consistently be the support system. So it's an apparent support system, not one where you're kind of staying behind the scenes and trying to help, but hand-holding through difficult times is often very, very important. And one of the things I keep saying is you must learn to hold space. What does that mean? It means meeting the person where they are at the time. So if they want to talk, just listen. Listen without judgment and without the aim of giving advice after. If they want advice, give it. If you see they're making particularly bad decisions, you might try to nudge them in the right direction. But if they seem to reject the advice, don't become overbearing or say, I'm never going to help you anymore because you never listen anyway. No, it's not about you. Don't make their depression, their problem, or their sadness about you. That's what holding space is, meeting them where they're at. So if all they want to do is watch TV together, watch TV. But come down to where they're at, come off of your high horse if you must, come out of judgment zone, and just show compassion. That's sometimes the best way to reach someone who is struggling. Now, while it's noble to want to be able to help a friend or a family member or a loved one who might be struggling emotionally or mentally, and I do encourage it, I encourage you to be empathetic and compassionate, to hold space with them and to be there when they need you. But sometimes their need is greater than you can meet. And what do I mean by this? Sometimes they need 24-hour support, and because of your own obligations, you just cannot be there for them at that level. Sometimes the level at which they're calling you or requiring venting is more than you can do without sacrificing your own life obligations and maybe even your own mental health. So that the willingness to help should not be at your own expense. You don't have to sacrifice your own mental health to help someone else. You have to be able to know when to put up a boundary. And when it's getting too much, you should ask for help from another friend or family member who could help to bear the load. And more importantly, encourage them to seek counseling from a psychologist, a licensed counselor. It could be online, it could be locally. If they're not the type who will seek therapy, see if you can recommend that they read certain books, listen to certain podcasts, even this one,
and see if you can recommend online resources for them that would help them to kind of begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But do not sacrifice your own emotional well-being to carry someone else. Know when it's too much, even for you. Struggling. So thank you for watching today's episode. Feel free to rewind, fast forward, pause, press play, and of course, share with anyone you think might benefit from this information. I also like to remind you that the episode is not intended to replace medical or professional advice. So if you or someone you know might be struggling, especially with a mental illness, we still encourage you to reach out to a professional. If you know you are struggling right now and you're having difficulty dealing with it on your own, I invite you to consider contacting any of these helplines, hotline numbers, or support groups. So until next time, don't forget to make your mental wellness a priority.